Hey everyone, how's it going? Today I'm going to be bringing you an awesome deck. Well, I think it's awesome. It's my personal deck that I've really been jiving with for the My Hero Academia card game. I haven't got to play it as much as I'd like. I've recently moved and I don't have a lot of venues to really play around me that are close, but it has some testing behind it. But I just want to throw my take in there. I know we're a little bit late to the party here. A handful of people have shown off Tokoyami, but this is just my personal take. So what I'm going to do here, we'll just get right into it. One thing of note here, I just want to say up front, you'll see this side deck. Keep note that this isn't a true side deck. In the deck tech videos going forward, I'm not going to necessarily suggest, what you should or shouldn't have in your side deck, as I find in most card games it's very preferential. Sometimes people like to shore up their deck's defenses in the side deck. Sometimes they like to add a little bit of offense or some weird quirks. Some people prefer sandbagging another character in there in case they want to swap their main character out in a three game set. So instead, I'm going to use the sideboard as kind of cards of interest that I could also or are heavily considering swapping in and out or playing with the numbers on. And we'll go over those at the end of the deck. So instead, we'll just go right into starting off with the character. Tokoyami coming in, looking awesome. I love this card. I love the purple on the card, image on the card, and the character in the show is pretty awesome as well. So first off, we'll just start with his enhance. Actually, no, we're going to start with his regular stats. He is a 7-hander. Being a 7-hander, he's going to be a little on the squishy side with only 20 health. Not the squishiest 7-hander I've played, but it's still down there as far as health is concerned. He does have 2 enhances. We got once per turn, you can discard the top 5 cards of your deck and then take a Summon Dark Shadow card out of your discard pile and place it into your hand. And we'll go over that card next, and then we'll go over the attacks, and then we'll go over the foundations, and then we'll cover those side cards that I may or may not swap in and out as time goes on. But the second enhance, it'll allow you to give this attack +1 or -1 damage, and it's playable only while committed. So you're going to want to make sure your character's committed, so either by the use of Summon Dark Shadow, which we'll get to in a second, or by using him to pay for attacks if you have no need to shield the top 5 cards of your deck to get a Dark Shadow, or you've already used it this turn. It'll give you some extra value out of all your attacks going forward. And that's kind of what he does. He just kind of builds up slowly with a bunch of small stuff until he just overwhelms you. So as stated, we're going to jump over to the actions first. Just because this card is so crucial to his kit, I want to cover it now. So moving forward, you can kind of get what it'll do to everything else. So we got Summon Dark Shadow. It's a 2-diff, 5 check with a 2 mid block ally. And it is a constant effect on it, which while it is in your card pool, your attacks will get +1 speed and +1 damage. +1/+1, very good stat boost, especially since you can consider especially in this deck, quite easily get more than one. So all your attacks just, exponentially just start getting boosted and boosted. So some of the attacks don't have the greatest stats, but with these buffs, they're going to be hitting pretty hard and they'll be pretty hard to block as well. We also have a couple nice finishers in there to really nail it home when it's time to get that killing blow. It does come with an enhance to make it a little bit easier to get into the card pool, and it also helps you with your aggression. The enhances your next check to play a card gets +3, and then you commit your character. So this is one of the ways you can commit your character, so you can turn on your second enhance on Tokoyami, so you can start plussing or minusing damage. So you can block with this as well to get it into the card pool if they ever add reversals into the game, which I'm personally excited for when that happens. But you can also use it defensively to give your block +3, because remember, it just says a check to play a card. It does not say a check to play an attack. So if you really need to block something and you have this in your hand on defense and the +2 mid block isn't going to cut it, you have something else to block, you really want to stop it, you just drop that down with the +3. It should give you a nice boost to your defense there. So pretty good card, can be used on both offense and defense. Also, it being an ally, if you block with it or use the enhance, there's a couple where I think there's one actually, maybe not a couple, but there's a couple of effects that deal with the amount of allies in your card pool, which will give you some effects. And actually, it'll be right here. We'll start off with the foundation. No, we're going to go to attacks first, then we'll do foundations. I almost forgot about that. So, probably the most important attack here is going to be Dark Shadow Ruin. It is a 5 diff, 3 check, like most attacks. It also has a pretty decent block at 1 mid. Can basically block anything, either half block or full block. It is a 4 high for 5 damage. It has ally, breaker 1, and ranged. And for those who don't know, breaker 1 makes your opponent's stuff cost more if you block with this, by 1 in this case. It has 2 enhances, both of which are really, really nice in this deck. And this is why it's also probably the most important attack. So the first one, action cards in your card pool do not count towards progressive difficulty for the rest of the turn. This makes any Dark Shadow summons you play for the entire turn not count, so you can feel free to put as many in your card pool as humanly possible. Even if you just have 1 or 2, this helps tremendously, because as you're trying to play strings of attacks, you know, having basically -1 or 2 to your difficulty is really nice. And especially if you can start playing some of these, playing a chain where you have 3 or 4, you get major value out of this, and everything is just going to be hitting really hard, and they'll be really fast. The second one kind of pairs well if you do play a Summon Dark Shadow, which most of the time you won't be attacking unless you have either this card and a Dark Shadow or a couple Dark Shadows anyway, so you can pretty much guarantee the second enhance will go off. If the attack received a speed and damage bonus, it gets +3 damage and gains stun 1. So out of the gate, let's say you just have Dark Shadow Ruin and a Summon Dark Shadow, this attack will be going 5 speed and 9 damage, and it's going to stun 1. That's going to hurt, and this is your opener most of the time. So keep that in mind, because an opener like this, for the most part, has to be answered by something. People can't just face tank 9 damage, and since this is the opener, it just gets worse from here for them if you have more than 1 attack, especially if you have a nice big chain and one of the finisher cards. But moving right along, we have Dark Shadow Talon. It's a 4 diff, 2 low block, 3 check, with 4 high for 4 damage. So pretty decent damage, pretty decent speed. It's got a nice 4 difficulty, meaning later on in the turn it won't be as difficult to pull out. And it's just in general nice, and the main reason we're running this is because it's first enhance. Add 1 action card from your discard pile to your card pool. And of course the main target for this is always going to be Summon Dark Shadow. It allows you to get another one in your card pool, turning on that constant effect. You won't get the +3 to your check, but everything from that point on will get +1 damage, +1 speed. And assuming you played this first, it won't count towards progressive. And let's say best case scenario, you grab one from the discard and you've already played one this turn. Well, now this thing is doing 6 speed, 6 damage, which is pretty hefty for a 4 diff as your second attack. The icing on the cake is the Deadlock Enhance, where your rival loses 1 health for each ally card in your card pool. And pretty much most of our attacks are going to have ally, and of course Summon Dark Shadow is also an ally. And we have 1, maybe 2 foundations that might have ally in it as well, so very unlikely that those will be in there. But again, Deadlock enhances, I don't really like to give too much weight on them. Deadlock doesn't happen very often. Most players try to avoid it if they can, but at least it's deadlock pressure in some capacity, so it at least makes your opponent think twice if they know you have this in the deck. Great attack, great for putting pressure, great for amplifying your turn and setting up your last attack and future attacks. We got 3 copies of Frigid Heat Wave. In the side deck you'll see there's another one there. I've played with maybe doing 4. It is a fantastic card. It is quite expensive though. At some point I've even dropped this down to 2 of, just because it's good, but it's only really good near the end when you have a lot of stuff in your discard pile to make sure that first enhance goes off. So we'll get to the stats. As you can see here, 5 diff, 3 check, 5 high, 4 damage. The main enhance here is if you have 6 or more ranged attacks in your discard pile, you get to draw 2 cards. And as anyone knows, in most any card game, card draw is very powerful, especially in this deck where you're trying to really do long strings of attacks to really maximize your Dark Shadow summons and try to just bleed your opponent out of attack or blocks until they just have to face tank 9 and 10 damage attacks and eventually die. Very helpful to just draw 2 more. You can get 2 more attacks, or if you kind of burnt yourself out and this is the last attack, it'll let you draw some defensive options before you end your turn. The other enhance also helps out. You discard top 3 cards of your deck, potentially adding the last couple you need to draw 2 cards, and this attack will get +2 damage for each ranged attack discarded. And every single attack we run in this deck is ranged, so if you hit any sort of attack, this is going to get some bonus damage. And with the Dark Shadow summons, at 5 speed at base and 4 damage plus any other damage you're going to get off this, it'll be also hitting quite hard most of the time. The next attack is a great finisher. At one point I had a chaos version of the deck that had a high attack that had good powerful, but unimportant. Ice Storm is a great finisher here because it's a 4 diff, so it's a little easier to get at the end of your chains, and it's a low attack. All the attacks in the deck besides this are highs, sort of to condition your opponent to hold their high blocks and not so much low blocks, as most of the time they won't have any value from them. And then there's this scary piece that'll come at the end after you've drained defense out of their hand, they've tapped a bunch of stuff to block your previous attacks. You drop this down mid to late game and boost it up as much as possible with powerful 3. It's a 4 low for 4 at base, and its first enhance is it can't be blocked by attack cards. And for those who don't know, most of the time the really good block modifiers are on attacks, the 1s, 2s, and I think there's maybe even attack with 0. But most foundations have a 3 or higher. Sometimes they'll have a 2 block, which means that this bad boy is going to be even harder to stop, especially since it's your finisher, because you're going to have 1, 2, 3, or 4 Summon Dark Shadows boosting its speed innately, and its second Deadlock enhance will boost its speed if you happen to make them in Deadlock. So overall, great card. It's a great, like I said, it's a great finisher because you're going to be conditioning them to only carry high blocks. And then you come in with sometimes just an unblockable low that you boost a bunch with powerful and they can't stop it. Or since it's at the end of the string, with your Summon Dark Shadows, it just has too much speed to stop. It's also a mid block with 2, and that's important because it has Breaker 2. Having a mid block with Breaker is really potent because you can block any type of attack with a mid block. Even if you were half blocking, Breaker 2 can sometimes just stop your opponent's turn in its tracks. +2 difficulty hurts a lot, especially if they're riding that fine line with how many foundations they have. And the last attack here, we got Crow and Frog Takedown. Another high attack, 4 speed, 5 damage. It's got ya boy on it, and it has a regular enhance that anyone can use where it doesn't count towards progressive difficulty. It speaks for itself. The main reason being is we want to try to do big long attack strings, and the less difficulty it is to do more attacks, the better and more successful you're going to be on your turn. Its second one can only be used by Asui and Tokoyami, and it allows you to ready 1 card in your staging area that hasn't been readied this combat phase. Keep in mind it says 1 card too. So you can either ready your character, so you can, if you haven't used it yet this turn, the once per turn, you can discard top 5, get another Dark Shadow, keep boosting everything up, or you can ready one of your foundations and you have some potent commit abilities on them, or you just need something extra to pay for the next attack. Very versatile, good card, doesn't count towards progressive in almost all cases when you use it, and it does decent damage and is a high to continue on with those high attacks. Alright, and that is the attack suite. We got 3 copies of the Frog Takedown, by the way. It's another one that's in here. Maybe play with the ability to add 4 if you prefer. You can go right ahead. It's not a bad card at 4 either. I just prefer it at 3 personally. Alright, now we're going to jump on over to the foundations of the deck. And we're just going to go straight down the list, starting with 2 copies of Back to Back. It'll be a low block for 2, and it has an enhance effect where you flip it and the attack gets -3 damage. And only playable if you have an ally in your card pool. So this is mainly a defensive piece where you'll, somehow get Dark Shadow in there or block with one of your ally attacks or ally foundations. So it won't be something you can use on the first attack, but if they bring in a good finisher attack and you've already blocked with Summon Dark Shadow, or you've used Summon Dark Shadow to boost your check, or blocked with one of your ally foundations, then you can lessen the damage and potentially survive the turn. That's also why I only have 2 copies. It's an effect that won't always be live, and sometimes it's an effect that won't even be as relevant, but it's an effect that you'll be glad you have when you have it. It's also just a 5 check, and it has a deadlock enhance that's pretty decent, where you can boost your attack and speed. Again, it's mainly just deadlock pressure because most people won't go to deadlock. The next one, 4 copies of Cool Student. Very, very good foundation, especially in this deck. It gives you a high block, and its enhance is you discard 1 momentum, and your next check to play a card gets +2. And its other enhance is add this card to the top of your deck. Since outside of Ice Storm we don't have a lot of momentum use, this is particularly potent because in those long strings, sometimes you're running out of foundations, you're really living off the top of the deck when you're making checks. This will give you more consistency if you don't have a bunch of Summon Dark Shadows to boost your checks. You can boost the check using your momentum, and then let's say you really need to hit with the next attack. You can just put this on top. You'll be guaranteed a 5 check with the +2, so it's like you're guaranteed a 7 check if you spend 1 momentum, plus any other effects you might have. And a 7 check, even middle to end of the turn, is generally good enough to guarantee something like an Ice Storm, especially if you have, a Dark Shadow Rune making these not progressive. You have a couple Frog Takedowns making it not progressive. It should guarantee you the ability to drop your finishing attack, which will be very potent. The next one, Great Spam Foundation. Personally, one of my favorite. I love the art on it as well. Spam at 0 cost, 5 check. The enhance allows you to boost a damage by 1 if your character is committed. And of course, we're playing Tokoyami. 9 times out of 10, you're going to play a Dark Shadow when you're on the aggression, so you're going to commit your character, or you could even just commit him to pay for a cost at some point, because you're going to want to turn on that +1/-1 damage anyway. So this is just more value for something you're already going to do, and it's a 0 cost foundation. Not really much else to say there. We got 2 copies of Irrefutable Force of Nature. I played with the idea of having 3 in here. I felt 2 copies was the best in my personal playing. Its enhance is you commit it to seal 1 earth, fire, or water asset or foundation. It allows you to turn off some pretty powerful effects on a handful of foundations and assets. Well, not necessarily assets, but the foundations for sure. Especially under Earth, there's a lot of really, really good foundations that being able to turn them off for the turn, very helpful. And then its other one is you remove it to seal an asset or foundation. Again, really good. If they're not playing one of those 3 symbols, you can also seal something if you really need to. Next one will be Self-Assured at 2 copies. I debated dropping this down to 1 because it is a 4 check rather than a 5 check, and I'm not a huge fan of 4 checks. They come up with my unlucky amounts of luck all the time, and I end up, dying to it. But its effect is definitely worth it. It's also unique, which is another reason why I thought about just running 1. I ultimately decided on 2 because one of its enhance here. Its enhance in the bottom is destroy it to draw a card for every 4 ranged attacks in your discard pile. So having a self-destruction ability makes it easier because if I draw another one and I really want to play it, I can just burn the one on the field, draw some cards, and then play the other Self-Assured at the end of turn. Its other enhance, which is also very useful, is you commit it to change the zone of this attack. And of course, since we run primarily 1 zone type, it'll be really nice to have a tiny bit of flexibility, and it can also be used on defense. If your opponent drops a high and you only have low blocks, you can just change it to a low, block it, no problem. Next one will be Heroic Lineage at 2 copies. With 2 responses, both modifying speed, either on the offense or defense. You can either commit it after your rival plays an attack, and it receives, after your rival gets a damage bonus, you can give the attack -3 speed. I do like this because most of the time, if the attack isn't scary, you probably won't block it or won't have too much difficulty blocking it. But it gives you the option to, if they do something like, you know, powerful 3 times, and you're like, okay, now I need to answer this. You just commit it, give it -3 speed. Hopefully that's enough to turn the tide in your favor for blocking. The other one is an aggressive one. You commit it. After your attack receives a speed bonus, it gets +2 damage. And of course, most of the time if we're attacking, we're going to have a Summon Dark Shadow on the field, which means you're going to have a speed bonus. So this just gives you a little more damage for the attack that you're going to be going in on. Got 2 copies of those just because it's useful, but it being committing is a heavy-handed cost, so we don't want too many of these in the deck. The next one is 4 copies of Aggressive Temper. This card I just like finding uses for personally, and in my experience it's actually happened quite a lot, this effect here, which is a response after your card enters the discard pile. During the attack's enhanced step, your attack gets +2 damage. Of course, we have Tokoyami. You shed 5 cards. Good chance you can hit 1, 2, maybe even I've had it happen where I had 3 in one discard and got +6 damage on the attack in question. You have Frigid Heatwave, where you're going to discard the top 3. Another outlet where you might just randomly get a bunch of damage. And it's also great because we have Latent Skill here, which allows you to discard cards, because this just has to hit the discard pile. It doesn't care where it came from. So you can filter a couple things out of your hand, get some bonus damage on demand if you have Latent Skill, and it overall is pretty good. I personally like it. Some people might want to swap it out for some other foundations, because like I said, I just personally like finding uses for this card. Next one will be 2 copies of Frozen. Enhance your turn, destroy 1 foundation. Your rival commits 1 foundation. Part of the reason this card is in here, I thought about increasing it to 2 of because I run Aggressive Temper. The effect itself is good as it is, but having an outlet on the board that allows me to destroy Aggressive Tempers that are on the field is just a nice thing to have, because you'll both be able to commit something, making the attack you're doing harder to block, and then boosting its damage, making it more deadly if they can't block it. A nice twofold thing there, but that's also why I only have it at 2 of, because it's good, but primarily I'm only going to be really using the destruction if I absolutely have to, or if I have an Aggressive Temper, which isn't all the time. Got 2 copies of Latent Skill. It allows you to flip it and discard 2 cards and draw 2 cards. Great card in general. People like to, siphon through their hand, get rid of the stuff you don't need, potentially draw into the attacks you do need when you're on a big long string of attacks, or in some cases you don't have the block you need, pitch 2 cards, draw 2, hopefully draw what you need. It's just a nice option to have, and since it's a flip effect, you'll still have the foundation there to pay costs if need be. The next one I got 1 of, Fulfilled My Duty. I would potentially jump this up to 2, but it's a 4 check, so I've been running it at 1 of just because, like I said, I personally don't like having a lot of 4 checks if I can help it. But its enhance is destroy, and you end the enhance step. Basically, you just give the enemy's attack flash. They get 1 chance to use an enhance if they're attacking, and then you just end the enhance up. Or sometimes if you know they have some enhance that's going to really mess up your attack, you can just end the enhance step and give it pseudo flash. It's always nice to just turn off all the effects on the board for 1 attack. Sometimes that's what's needed, especially since we have Dark Shadow. If you throw out the last attack, the buffs from Dark Shadow will happen as the card is played, and then your first enhance, you can end the enhance step. So sometimes just the speed and damage boost from Dark Shadow is enough to bring the attack to lethal, and then you just end the enhance step, not allowing your opponent to lower its speed or do any shenanigans that might possibly make it not deadly. Then the last one, I have 1 copy in here. You can debate putting 2. It being a 3 diff is what makes me want to just have it at 1. However, I do think it's really good. It's a good block if you need it, and on the field, it allows you to enhance, remove it from the game, discard 2 cards, and this attack is considered to be completely blocked during the block step. Sometimes there's attacks that are just too fast for you to block, or the opponent has some ability that makes it so the cards in your hand can't block it, or you just have the wrong block modifier. There's a lot of times where there's just, if I survived a single attack, I would have been able to kill them next turn. This allows that. Just being able to be like, this attack is stopped no matter what you do is always a great option to have. Like I said, it's good enough to where I'd debate running 2. It's just at a 3 diff, it's a little arguable in my opinion, but I would not fault you for running 2 or more copies of it. Good card in general. Also, I just realized I stopped mentioning the difficulty or the check on most of the cards. I hope that's okay. Any one of them that are the standard 2-5, I just didn't mention. Same with the attacks. If they had a 3 check, I just didn't mention the check because that's what the average is for most cards. All right, this will bring us to the last card in the actual deck that you haven't seen. 2 copies of Plus Ultra. Anyone who plays the game knows this is a great card in pretty much any deck that is My Hero only. It's a 2 diff action, and it has, whenever you attempt to block with the card, you reduce the speed of the rival's attack to 0. It has a +5 block modifier, so basically you block anything on a 5 check. Very potent defense. It's another great answer. It's another reason why I only run probably like 1 Typhoon, just because this will kind of shore up that as well in the defense area. I don't want to go too defensive because otherwise we'll lose the ability to dunk on people hard. And then it's other enhance, which is very potent as well. First enhance, discard 1 momentum, double the attack speed or damage. This is exceptional when you're trying to do a finisher. You drop Ice Storm, you really want to make sure they can't block it, double the speed, it'll go to 8, and then it'll get buffed up with Dark Shadow, however many you have, making it near unstoppable for most cases. Then you buff it up with Powerful, end the game. Or if you already have a fast attack, or they're all tapped out, there's a low chance they're going to be able to block the attack with its base speed, you double the damage to ensure that if they half block, they're probably going to die anyway as well. Great on offense, great on defense. Great card. Yeah. And that is all the core cards that I have in the deck. So we're just going to quickly kind of skim through these 10 cards that I have as optional cards or cards to increase. Some of them I talked about already. We got adding in an additional card of Crow and Frog. We talked about that, bringing it from 3 to 4. Not a bad idea. We got Frigid Heatwave. Again, we talked about that as well. Bring it from 3 to 4. Not a bad idea. It's a great card in general. And if you want to have a little bit more card draw, wouldn't be a problem. I thought about running 1 copy or maybe even 2 copies of Nitro Explosion. Mainly just because of its second enhance there, where you remove and your attack gains powerful 2. Playing it early in the turn, doing a little bit of damage. It is ranged, so it'll still proc off a Frigid Heatwave, but it'll basically allow any attack that you're having as a finisher have the ability to do powerful 2, making it so you don't just need Ice Storm to do, skyrocket your damage to, just like 14 or something crazy. Basically make anything lethal is most of the thing behind this, but I haven't tested it personally. It's on the block of things I plan on testing in the future. For actions, I got Go Beyond. You discard 1 momentum, add an attack from your discard pile from your hand, remove it from the game. Allows you to choose, an attack that you need. Let's say you didn't draw the Dark Shadow Ruin, you can attack with something else and then have this be your second attack. It'll be a bit pricey, but if you have a bunch of Dark Shadows you plan on putting in there for the turn, sometimes it's worth the momentum and the added extra foundations you'll probably have to commit in order to play it. But it just gives you the option to grab any of your attacks out of there. Then we got Capture Evildoers. The form on it is particularly what drew me to this card. You discard a momentum. It's another momentum outlet besides the 1 attack we have with Powerful, and allows you to discard up to 3 cards from your card pool. You can get rid of all of the things that are causing progressive difficulty, so you can more easily play more attacks at the latter half of your turn. Pretty good. And the other one allows you to enhance and remove 1 rival momentum. If you did, you add the top card of your deck to momentum and remove this card from the game. So it basically denies your opponent some momentum, potentially gives you momentum so you can set up, a big ender if you have the meaning to. It also is a breaker 1, which is not terribly amazing, but it's notable and sometimes is the difference between, dying and not dying on your opponent's turn. A couple of these here, like I mentioned, in the Typhoon, adding 1 or 2 of these to the deck in exchange for something else would not fault you at all for it. Having the extra defense there is nice. The cost is a bit high, but it's basically, saves you completely from something. Got Arrogant Disposition. There's no real punch attacks in here. I kind of probably will never add this. The main reason it's in here is because it's a 6 check. I like 6 checks, and currently with the amount of cards we have, there's only really like 1 or 2 6 checks in the entire game, and this is the only one this deck can run. So throw it in here. If you want to shore up your checks to make it a little more consistent, you can throw it in there. If the enemy's using punch attacks, it'll give you a little bit more defense as well. There's quite a few of them in the game as a whole. So some games, if you do run this, it'll do nothing but a 6 check, and some games it'll have great value. Potentially an actual good sideboard card, if I'm being honest, just because you'll side it in when you're in a matchup that they use punches. Otherwise, you might want to pass on this one. Got Fulfill My Duty. We already talked about it. Adding a couple more, wouldn't fault you for it. Ending the enhanced step can definitely save games. As a 4 check, it's just, I personally don't like more than that. We got In Danger. It's a good spam foundation, and it's one of those good defensive tools again. You destroy it if the attack's damage would kill you, and then you give the attack -3 speed, making it a lot more blockable in most cases, potentially saving you from dying. And then we got Staggering Positivity. Enhance, flip, your attack gets +2 damage, period. If this attack is blocked, shuffle up to 3 cards from either player's discard pile into their deck. This could be used twofold. You get the 2 damage, obviously. You can shuffle in Dark Shadows or some of your key attacks if your deck starts getting thin, just so you can kind of guarantee that you'll have the gas you need to finish the game. It's really what it's mainly there for. And you can also use it on a little bit of offensive defense, I guess you could say. If it's your turn and you're planning on trying to kill them, their deck is getting low, you could shuffle in a bunch of attacks, making it so it's a higher likely that, let's say they have 10 cards in their deck or less. You shuffle in 3 more, that's 3 more bad checks that you just put in there that they might flip while you're attacking them on your, strings of attack. It does have a 4 check though. We already know how I feel about lower checks, but it might be worth it in this case. And that wraps up all of the cards we have here, including my extra mentions. I hope you guys enjoyed. Go ahead in the comments and feel free to discuss what you might change about the deck, or if you personally have a deck with Tokoyami that you want to share, feel free to share it in the comments. In the description box below, we will definitely have the UVS Ultra link for this deck if you wanted to check it out and, look it up yourself, build it, play it, modify it. It'd be great. It'll be there for you. But that wraps up this My Hero Academia deck tech video. Thank you guys for joining me, and I will definitely look forward to seeing you guys next time. Take care.